Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Oh, sorry, I can't use that one. It's already taken. From an undisclosed location for reasons of. Nope, that one's gone too. Okay, how about this one? Welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. That should do. Okay, welcome to the first episode of Truth Sentinel. My name's Scott. I was uploading Caravan to Midnight episodes. But unfortunately, I was asked not to do that anymore. So I thought, kind of just as a hobby, I might just try recording some of these episodes myself. Just looking at the news, reviewing other channels, and trying to find the truth behind the news, literally, because obviously these days it's quite difficult to find much truth in the news. So we have to work it out for ourselves. And I thought that maybe this could be a discussion channel where we try and work it out together. We can speculate, we can look at facts as well, but it's actually really difficult and quite confusing these days to know what to believe. Do you believe the conspiracies? Do you believe the mainstream news? Is it somewhere in the middle? Who knows? But it's good if we all get together maybe and try and work it out for ourselves. I don't think for most of these things it's easy to know the truth. You can just look at the facts and maybe come close to the truth. Anyway, thanks for the comments under previous videos and on this channel. Basically, this section's going to become very important if these broadcasts are going to continue. And basically, this is an experiment, first of all. If there's enough people interested, then I'll continue to make broadcasts. But it's more of a hobby for me at the moment. I'm not professing to be somebody, but it's free, so that's something. I was reading everybody's comments about John B. Wells and his idea that it's not possible to put his videos on YouTube. Rather than feeling anger or anything towards him, I just feel like it's a mistake from a business point of view, and he's entitled to make those mistakes. Or it's his decision. I mean, he actually did make comment about uploading to YouTube and things like that. Basically saying that the reason he didn't want people to do it was because of security, his security. Now, he may feel that, I don't know, but I know that Alex Jones probably says a lot more things that could get him into trouble. I don't know. He's entitled to say what he wants, and I'll still be listening to him anyway. So this show is not about me. It's just about discussions. It's for you to write comments and say the kind of things you want us to talk about on here. When I say us, I mean the collective us, because it's just me at the moment. I may have, if this picks up and takes off, then who knows? I may have guests on in the future. The music, by the way, some people have asked who the music is behind in the background. If it gets annoying, let me know. But at the moment, it's Sufjan Stevens' Futile Devices. Thanks to Kieran for introducing me to his music. This show is not about me, as I said. It's about you and about what you want me to talk about. Just to basically stimulate discussion on this discussion forum in the comments section. But it wouldn't be polite to not let you know a little bit about me, so you can see where I'm coming from. I've travelled the world quite a lot, so some of the places I've been do have a direct relation to a lot of the topics at the moment. Actually, I lived for two 2 years in the Fukushima area. I worked as a teacher on a very strange place they built in Japan near Fukushima called British Hills. It's kind of like a British village they built on top of a mountain using all authentic materials, oak transported from England, to basically create a fake village in Japan so that Japanese people, students, businessmen, and women could come and experience some British life. So there'd be like a tea room there, a pub, a palace. Would you believe it was built by one of the richest men in Japan for as a present for his wife. Apparently, it costs something like £50 million. It was quite impressive, and I enjoyed working there. Anyway, I got to know a little bit about the Fukushima area. The nearest city, the nearest town, sorry, that was closest to where I was Shinshirakawa, which is about I don't know, maybe half an hour drive, I think, from my memory, to Fukushima. And we often used to have the Daiichi school visiting our complex. It was kind of like a school summer camp theme park complex based on a British village. Um, so the things I do know about the area was it was very prone to earthquakes. I remember one time sitting in the lounge in this themed area, and a tree, literally, I'm not joking, moved past the window, went to the left, disappeared from my view, and then moved back in view to the window. This was an earthquake, obviously, but it was a very side-to-side earthquake. So they're quite used to having earthquakes there, um, which begs the question: why build nuclear reactors there? It was a very strange thing to do, especially with the sea being there. And obviously, you've then got the danger of some tsunamis. Um, Talking of tsunamis, another thing I was involved in was I was actually during the tsunami, the big tsunami. I was actually in Phuket at the time of the tsunami, right close to the sea as well. That was one of the spookiest times of my life. It really taught me a lot about coincidence and how some of the decisions you make can totally affect whether you live or die. I I arrived in Phuket 6 hours before the tsunami. I actually got to my hotel probably about 5 hours before the tsunami came in. I went to a bar close to my hotel, which was about my hotel was about 4 minutes walk to the beach, and the tsunami came 5 hours later. I was in a bar. I just arrived. I was tired. I had some drinks. Probably some drinks is probably an understatement. But I had some drinks. And sometimes, when you first arrive in a place, you want to go walk down to the beach. Spend a few hours. But I was actually after drinking. I had too much and decided to go to sleep. I woke up the next day. Actually, I woke up at 10 o'clock in the morning and I felt a very, very small earthquake. Actually, in Thailand, the earthquake was almost negligible because it was obviously quite a long way away from the epicenter. But I did actually feel it because I'd felt that feeling before in Japan. It's just sometimes for the really small ones, it's just a feeling that something. It's almost like you think you can feel something moving, but you're not sure. Anyway, I woke up at 10 or 10:30, I can't remember, feeling that feeling, and then thinking, I must be imagining things. They don't usually have earthquakes in Thailand. It's not a common thing like it is in Japan. So I went back to sleep. The next day, when I woke up the same day, probably about 2 o'clock, went downstairs. It was a sunny day as it usually is in Thailand. Looked outside and had no idea what had happened, but knew something wasn't right. There was sand everywhere, motorbikes upside down, and still wasn't sure what had happened. I just thought this didn't look like the brochure at all. Just what a mess. Still unsure. Obviously, just woken up as well, so I wasn't thinking straight. Had a bit of a hangover, I won't lie, and went to hire a motorbike. I wanted to have a look around anyway. They looked at me, said no, and I thought were quite impolite. And I thought, oh, this is the mood. The mood around here is very odd. Saw everyone crowding around a TV. It was CNN. Looked at the TV. It was a wave coming down a street. Strange thing was, it was the street I was standing on. So the water had come in, gone out, left sand everywhere. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about that. I'm just to say that I had dinner in a restaurant on that street, with one eye on the sea. Everyone thought it was coming back. So um, basically, the thing that I found spooky about that whole situation was I desperately wanted to stay in a hotel right on the beach. My hotel wasn't. It was about 4 minutes from the beach in Caron Beach, which was affected by the tsunami. The water came to our hotel, but it wasn't as bad as, say, 10 minutes away, drive away in Patong, where lots of people were killed. But the thing that I found spooky was I desperately had wanted to stay on the beach in Patong and also in Koh Phi Phi Island. I love Koh Phi Phi. It was one of my favorite places. And basically, hotels were booked up in Koh Phi Phi, the dates I wanted. Patong, my friend said to me he didn't want to stay there. I was going with two friends. My friend said he didn't want to stay there. Patong is a sleazy area. There's an element of truth in that. But I wanted to be by the sea. Patong is the most commercial place there, with lots of places by the sea. And anyway, also Koh Phi Phi, if I had managed to get a place to stay at the dates I wanted, there's a good chance I would be dead, because Koh Phi Phi is a small island. It's quite flat. A lot of people, and including me, I would have stayed in a wooden huts on the beach. They didn't stand a chance. Anyway, the main point is to let you know that I've stayed in a lot of the areas that are in the news at the moment, so I've got some background information. But also just to highlight the fact that there does sometimes seem to be hidden forces behind the scenes. I just still find it strange that I arrived just hours before the tsunami, and the choices I made about hotels. It's almost like someone was guiding me not to stay on the beach. Anyway, so other places I've lived. So I've lived in Fukushima. I've spent probably up to about a year in Thailand, worked in Thailand too, and in Japan and Fukushima. Ukraine, which we will talk about today, because it's just the biggest story, definitely one of the biggest stories in the news today. I've got a lot to say about that. I lived in Ukraine for 4 years, maybe longer. Honestly, I'm actually losing track of how long I've spent in places. Could be 5 years, 4 to 5 years in Ukraine, mostly in Lviv and in Odessa, which is actually quite applicable to the current story in the news at the moment, because those two cities are completely opposing in their mentality. Lviv is West Ukraine. Odessa has a very Eastern Ukraine mentality, more pro-Russian. Lviv, pro the West, the EU. anti-Russia more. Okay, so I'll talk about that later, but basically I hope things work out there. I've got lots of friends there. We'll talk about that later. Where else? Let me think. So basically, I've worked in Kazakhstan. I've been to New York, visited the ground zero there. Been to Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, sorry. Um, Japan, Thailand. I'm from England, although I seem to spend more time abroad than I do actually in England. Um, I've had many jobs trying to look for something to satisfy me. I've been a tree surgeon, an aerial photographer, a recruitment consultant, part-time fireman, salesman, IT consultant. Right now, I'm working from home. I'm not sure what I want to do, to be honest, anymore. The news around me just makes me feel uneasy at the moment. It's difficult to focus on working sometimes when you feel like things could be getting really bad. And like a lot of people, I feel this year and next year could be pivotal times in human history. It's just a feeling. Maybe it's wrong. We'll find out. Um, okay, let's continue. I've also been to. I was also in Bangkok, by the way, during the recent revolution, which doesn't seem to have finished. I saw a video in the last few days of a hand grenade landing next to some of the Bangkok police. I don't know if you've seen that. That's another perfect example of fate and just how coincidences, apparent coincidences. I don't know if I think sometimes there must be coincidences, real ones, but I don't know if you've seen the video. But a hand grenade is thrown by some protester. Just as it's flying through the air, one of the police chiefs calls over one of his recruits and beckons him to sit next to him. There's obviously some delay. He beckons him again, ushers him over. He walks over, puts down his shield. As the grenade is flying through there, it hits that shield so that almost nobody sees it. Because he's literally just moved in position. The hand grenade hits the shield and lands right next to them. Nobody has seen that come in. Anyway, he lifts his shield, and then obviously the police chief sees it. But the hand grenade has already been there for like a second or two. So he goes to kick it, it explodes. I haven't heard about what's happened to this guy since, but I do believe he's obviously lost the use of at least one of his legs anyway. Today's show will be rambling on a bit as I feel that these shows shouldn't be too well prepared. I know that's could be considered a poor excuse, but I want it to be fairly free flowing. I'm going to obviously write down lists of things to talk about, and any comments you put in the comments section will be discussed. Not depending on how many comments there is. I mean, if there's thousands, then just the most interesting ones, or the most relevant ones, or just ones that I feel like I could talk about. The ones that I've seen so far. One of you wrote about Sandy Hook, so I'll be talking about that a bit today. Someone else put in a video about Ukraine. That'll definitely be discussed today, since it's a situation close to my heart. So keep your comments coming in. I'm going to investigate those topics. This show is not going to be so much about research. It's just going to be stimulating discussion. Future shows, I may try to do a lot more research before I come on and start discussing about something, because it's not good to discuss something you have not too much idea about the subject. But at the end of the day, a lot of the times when people on the streets have discussions, they don't have much clue about the subject. And how are they going to get the information to back up their conversations, their discussions? From the media. But as a lot of us know, the media aren't pumping out the truth a lot of the time. So a lot of discussions are based on one side, somebody who's read mainstream news and is using that information to back up their points. And usually it's arguing with someone else who has read the same news but doesn't believe it. And I think this is the problem we have in our society these days. I firmly am on the side of people who don't believe the news at the moment. I find it hard to trust any of the news at the moment. I just think things have got to the point where I'm just starting to believe that the situation and the around us is getting to a very dark point. Um, okay, so this channel is free. If you see adverts popping up, they shouldn't be because I haven't signed up to be a partner as yet to any YouTube scheme. And basically, to make money from shows, you have to sign up to be a partner so that all those pop-up adverts appear. Now, I hate those adverts. I find them really irritating and annoying. Sometimes, if you listen to a show before you go to sleep or something like that, which I've often done in the past, it's so annoying when you're just dropping off to sleep and then one of those adverts comes on and they tend to be slightly louder than the normal narration. One of those adverts come on and starts trying to sell you something. And me and a lot of my friends have decided to pay attention to those adverts, but probably not in a way that the advertisers want, which is to make a note of the product or service that's being sold and make a mental note never ever to buy or become involved in that service because they just becoming a scourge. Saying that, who knows down the line whether I'd have to, if you're going to run some kind of channel when it becomes a full-time job, and I'm looking way into the future at the moment because who knows how many episodes of this will be broadcast. But how do you fund such operations? Alex Jones tries to sell a lot of products. Most of his YouTube uploads have there's always the option to cut out the adverts, which is one good thing. I don't know what the answer is. Let me know what you think. If someone wants to run a free information service, but then it becomes a full-time job, how are they going to finance it? So that's one question. I will sometimes be asking questions on this show because basically, like I said, this is a discussion forum. It's not for me to try to provide the answers. Although I will give my opinions. That's for sure. How do you think people should fund these kind of channels? Okay. Next topic. I may not do a show every day. Maybe one a week is what I'm gonna try to stick to at the moment. But there could be more. If news breaks out, really interesting news, I could probably hardly stop myself from um, talking about it and hearing what other people have to say about it. That's what I'm interested in, hearing what other people have got to say about it. I'll also be looking at other shows. I can't always listen to them all, to be honest. I found when I was uploading Caravan to Midnight, I often found that the process of uploading them took so long that wasn't actually able to listen to them myself. That was partly due to the upload speed of my current place of residence. So if you have a faster upload speed, it would have been possible. But on some occasions, I'm not lying, it took 5 to 6 hours to upload to YouTube. Sometimes longer if you include other parts of the process, because the audio had to be changed into video and then uploaded. But it was a lot to do with the upload speed. So, but I tend to listen to Caravan to Midnight, Coast to Coast, Alex Jones, Lip TV. I don't know if you've seen that one. Um, Lip TV with Jesse Ventura's son is on that. People's Voice, Hagman and Hagman, Coast to Coast, as I've already mentioned, I think. And I find myself listening to them for for a number of weeks and then switching to another one. Um, at the moment, I used to listen to Alex Jones almost every night. Sometimes difficult to try and get to sleep with Alex Jones talking because he sometimes does start shouting, but I do find he's really in touch. Well, he stays quite closely connected to what's happening that day, literally. Whereas Coast to Coast, you have a lot about ghosts and things like that. All kinds, sometimes interesting subject. Somebody wrote the comment about the numbers lady that talks about numbers. I must admit, she used to annoy me. She may be a nice lady, but I just found it kind of a bit nauseating after a while. Whether there's anything in it is another thing. Who knows? I don't know, but I don't know. Don't know what to say about that, to be honest. If numbers, if all the numbers around us start to mean things, then you could become slightly paranoid, and or you could definitely sound crazy. That's all I'm saying. One thing I did want to talk about was Fukushima. How bad do you think it is? Um, I saw an article the other day which showed a great swathe of pollution and radiation heading towards America. Um, I do feel that governments have become quite good at lying to us these days, and it could be that that radiation coming from Fukushima is far, far worse, as some people are reporting, including Infowars.com. Um, it could be far, far worse than people are saying. Like I often felt with Chernobyl in Ukraine, if you go and live there for a number of years, you'll start to notice that friends will say, "Oh yeah, my grandfather died the other day," or "My friend's friend died," or "My brother died," all of cancer. And it's definitely different to being in England. I don't hear that to such a high degree. I do not hear it. So I think I think these incidents are far worse than people are told. Maybe in 50 years, people will say, "Oh yeah, yeah, the radiation was really bad. It was killing people." But who's ever going to admit to that? You've got companies involved, governments involved. They know there's going to be compensation claims. They have to stay quiet. They're not going to say it's as bad as it is. And I think that's what's happening in Fukushima. Um, Anyone who's lived in Japan for a number of years know that the mentality is vastly different from the West. I often found working in Japanese companies, you can see that the people at the top have supreme power. It's not the job of people below, workers, to point out problems. Maybe like in a say Western company, if there's a board meeting, you'll have people, you'll have workers who'll feel it's their right as a worker to give their opinions about any mistakes or any problems that they see in the company or things that aren't working well. It's their job, maybe at a business meeting, to say, "Hey, I don't think this is working. This is a big problem. This needs to be sorted out." That doesn't usually happen in Japan. That's not the job of the worker. The person at the top, it's their job to say how things are from the top down. Not and you're not. I think it's fair to say in Japan, people don't question so much about things that are happening. I think that's a fair comment. Let me know if you disagree with that, but um, the whole concept of creating harmony in society. Don't question too much. Let things flow. Let things go almost. So it would be quite natural for if the government and those companies said, "No, the radiation levels are this," then you're not going to get too many people speaking out against it over there. There is always exceptions in Japan, though. That's another thing I saw. So, how bad is it? How bad is this radiation leak? Is it so bad it's going to affect all of us? That's something we're going to have to find out. But this is the thing that Alex Jones talked about, soft kill. You know, I mean, if this is going to kill people over the next 20 years, it's not going to kill you immediately. It's not even going to affect you immediately. But is it going to start killing people over the next 20-year period, for example, on a large scale? I remember reading in the news recently some scientists talking about how the cancer rate was going to go up to a ridiculous level over the next 10 years. It's already at a ridiculous level. I remember reading also that since 1965, the the cancer rate has gone up to a crazy amount. It doesn't make sense. No one's investigating it properly. People are trying to not cure cancer, although apparently people are trying to do that. I don't know how long people are prepared to wait. Personally, I feel not much is being done to cure cancer. I've heard reports that cancer has been cured by some people, but nobody wants it to be cured. It makes too much money. Disease, whether people like it or not, terminal diseases, fatal diseases, are being allowed to continue because it makes money. And then if you think, if that's true, there must be some extremely evil people around. And I think it is true. Let me know what you think. I think the world is in this current state because of evil people and not, a collection of them. And they don't take responsibility for the problem themselves because they're not individually responsible. They're responsible collectively. I think had the world been run by honest, decent, good people like a lot of you and a lot of the people around you who you consider to be friends and good people, there would be a cure for cancer. There would be less poverty in the world. There would be less hunger, disease, famine, less problems, corruption, because normal, decent people care. Which leads us to the point that one of my friends said, and of course other people have said too, that the fact that they haven't dealt with these situations means they don't care and they are evil. Let me know what you think about that anyway. As mentioned before in a previous update to Caravan to Midnight, I recently met David Icke, Alex Jones, just shook their hands, said hello at the Bilderberg conference, which was in a mansion near Watford in England, and there was big demonstrations outside, not too close. We were in a field, quite a few, probably about 500 meters, maybe more. I'm not sure. From the hotel, we could see where they were meeting, and Alex Jones was, of course, shouting. So I'm sure they heard us. They were busy playing golf and making decisions, whether people like it or not. I think probably some of the biggest decisions are made whilst they're meeting in secret like that. It should be illegal, in my opinion. A lot of people don't seem to care anymore about some of the injustices that are going on. I can understand some people don't care because they're looking after families. They're busy. They don't want things to be as bad as they seem to be getting, so they prefer to ignore it in some ways. A lot of the time, it's single people who don't have families that have this responsibility almost to take on these issues, because we don't have to worry too much about families. That's not to say I'm sure there's some people out there, couples with children who do care, and even Alex Jones, he has children, So, there are exceptions. Okay, what are we going to talk about next? Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile has caused quite a stir over here since dying. Basically, he was a presenter on a TV, a DJ. I always felt like there was something creepy about him. He had lots of children's TV kind of programs like Jim'll Fix It. Um, I'm sure there's people listening who aren't from the UK and just wonder what that's got to do with them, but I think he's just the things that have been discovered about him are the things that will be discovered about the people in power across the world. The Satanism, the ritual sacrifices, the paedophilia rings, they're all going to be exposed and are being exposed. I just want to say I have a lot of respect for Bill Mahoney, who's trying to expose these things. He's motivated from, I think, deep anger and hurt about things that have happened to him, and he's trying to bring people down. Bring down these people, hold them responsible for the things that they've done. And some of the things that they've done and are doing are disgusting, and they're involving paedophilia rings, child molestation, but worse than that, killing children. Now, if these things are true, which I believe they are, because Bill Maloney doesn't seem to be a liar to me, and I don't think the victims coming to give information to him are lying, that the people that run our countries, some of them are involved in killing children for sex. Even an ex-president, ex-prime minister of the UK has said to be involved in this. If you want to find out more information about that, then check out Bill Mahoney. I believe his company's called his documentary company is Pie and Mash Films. Check out some of his stuff if you haven't done so already. But he's definitely helping to bring down and hold these people responsible. But the establishment are also dead set on making sure a lot of these things aren't discovered. And that's the kind of thing that we're fighting against. Okay, Sandy Hook. I promised that we'd speak about that. Basically, what do I know about Sandy Hook? I know that none of it seems to make a lot of sense. You've got people appearing on TV who don't appear to be real. I know there's the famous one of the guy who's laughing and joking before he comes on camera. He definitely does seem to be acting. I don't know what's going on there. Some people have said that uh, there are a certain amount of people when something really bad happens that they can laugh. Now, I know that's actually true because I sometimes do that myself. Funnily enough, it's a reaction, a normal human reaction in some ways, because that's how we sometimes find things funny, and we laugh because somebody says something that's so shocking, we laugh. That's how humor works. So sometimes if someone says something like, their dad's just died or something, we don't want it to believe it's true, and there's a natural human response with some people to laugh. Okay, so that can happen. I don't know if that's the case with that guy, but I saw another video of a woman, a couple talking the next day, I think, about their daughter, and I'm sorry, but it just didn't seem that was different because it wasn't a gut reaction about something that just happened. Some of the things they were saying were just, I cannot believe that if you just lost your child, they would be laughing and joking with the presenter the way they were talking, like it, maybe after a couple of years, but not after a couple of days. I'm sorry that I've forgotten the name of this couple. Maybe if we do a more in-depth analysis of that situation, I'll try to dig that out. But it was a couple talking about the death of their son or daughter, I think daughter, talking with a TV presenter, making very jovial, very jovial. It did not add up to me. There's a lot of things about Sandy Hook that don't add up. The video from the scene with the guy running away, the guy sitting in the cop car in the front seat. We've all, anyone who studied that will all be familiar with these topics. Videos that don't make sense, showing other schools when it's supposed to be this school in Sandy Hook. Lots of misinformation about the guns involved. People giving reports and talking about Adam Lanza's mother working at the school but not working at the school. Those could all be mistakes. Fair enough. But the bodies, the dead bodies, I heard that no one ever saw a dead body from that situation. I honestly don't know what to think about this situation. The point is, I think with a lot of these things, if it's true that was staged, if it's true, then we live in an extremely dark world. If it's not true, then we still live in an extremely dark world, because the fact that someone can go into a school and shoot so many children could also lead on to another conspiracy where talking about mind control. Adam Lanza seemed to go off the grid for a year or so before this happened. And these are the things that we notice if you study the news, patterns. The same can be said of the Boston bombers and the killings in the UK of the soldier. Those guys disappeared for a couple of years. When they come back, everyone says they're different. There seems to be documented evidence in all three of those cases that the CIA, the FBI, MI5 have all had contact with these people. And after that contact, all of a sudden, nobody recognizes them anymore, and then they go and do something out of character, almost inhuman. Those are the things that I find more credible and believable because they're also documented. The Boston bombers had links to the CIA, and that's not disputed. So the truth is there if you look for it, or at least some of the truth. You have to piece it together. I think that the chances that was some kind of mind control exercise is probably quite high. I also think another factor about the Sandy Hook situation is the drills, another pattern. The bombings in the UK, there were drills that day. 9/11, drills that day. Sandy Hook, drills that day or shortly before. And the Boston bombings, drills that day. This is a weird pattern. It doesn't make sense. These are coincidences that don't make sense because they're not coincidences, because it seems like these drills are there to confuse the situation so people don't know what's acting and what's real. And if that's the case, then at what stage does the acting become the reality? I don't want to believe that Sandy Hook was completely staged, especially as I think that there were some deaths involved there. I don't want to think that there's people out there that are evil enough to do that, and I think that's the problem with finding the truth. We really don't want to believe that this is the world we live in. So that's what I think about Sandy Hook at the moment. We'll definitely try to to do a lot of research in Sandy Hook situation and talk about that in more in depth later in another episode. But the other thing I was going to say about facts is it just seems to me sometimes you can just go around in circles. You can research forever on any of these subjects and get nowhere. It just seems like there's so many opposing views. There's people trying to debunk conspiracies. I definitely feel conspiracies are closer to the truth. At least that can be said. They're closer to the truth than the mainstream idea of events. That's definitely seems to be the case to me. I'm going to have a bit of a break now and then continue a bit later. So I'm going to have a cup of tea, think about what we can discuss next, because like I said, this first episode is going to be more like an introduction to a lot of topics. I'm going to check your comments, see if there's any other ideas. I need to talk about Ukraine after the break. There may not be a break for you because I might actually edit the video, so there's no break. We'll see what happens. Okay, thanks for listening. Speak to you in a moment. Welcome back to Truth Sentinel episode 1. Is it going to be the last episode? That remains to be seen from the kind of response that we get from this show. But it is, like I said, just a hobby. So in some ways it doesn't really matter too much how popular it is. It's just a little hobby at the second. But let me know if you think it's worth continuing. Remember, I don't profess to have any answers. I'm just basically trying to stimulate discussion on the discussion board to see if maybe we can work out some of the truth for ourselves, to listen to people's opinions about subjects. For example, I've got some speculation about what's happening in Ukraine. I know I have some background knowledge of that situation, having lived there for three to 4 years, maybe longer, maybe even 4 to 5 years, in Lviv and Odessa, in Ukraine. The situation there seems to be changing literally by the second. Let me just say something about President Yanukovych. I have never liked him. He's an absolute criminal, as in my opinion, and actually in most people's opinion in Ukraine, on both sides. Maybe on the for some people in the east, not everybody, but for some people, he's no worse than a lot of other politicians in Ukraine. But I think he's just a nasty piece of work. Mafia connections, criminal past. When he was younger, he was done for violent assault twice. This guy is a nasty piece of work. I don't trust anything he says, and I think he's dangerous. How on earth he hasn't resigned already is just unbelievable. He basically describing this situation as a coup d'etat, which it's not, in my opinion. It's people trying to get rid of someone who's just so corrupt that even for Ukraine, it's too much. Corruption runs throughout Ukrainian society. It's deeply embedded down to school children level, where you can pay for the results of your examinations and tests, where you can pay for a driving license without having to actually go through the test process itself. The problem with this corruption is that it can be very useful on a day-to-day basis. You can jump the queue in hospitals by paying a fairly, small amount by Western standards. £10, £20 will get you seen a lot quicker. So it can be very useful, and I think it's difficult for people to give that up. But people do see at the other end it can be extremely bad for the country. I think for the situation really to change in Ukraine, everything has to change. The mentality has to change. You need to get rid of corruption at the very lowest levels from when people are school children. They should no longer be able to pay for your results of your tests and qualifications. The benefits of that will be that people will be able to trust their doctors, knowing that they have really sat exams and are really qualified doctors. At the moment, people in Ukraine have to get recommendations as to which doctors actually know what they're talking about, which isn't really a good system. But Yanukovych, I think, is a very, very dangerous man. He's still refusing to resign, despite the fact his own MPs now have voted to oust him. Surely this means he will go. But I'm reading on the BBC website, which although reports a very sanitized version of the news, and I can barely believe most of it, it still has some facts there which you can actually start to look and try to work out the truth for yourself. It says that Mr. Yanukovych's spokesman said he does not accept the decision. Now this guy is incredible. I think he was actually seen walking out with a couple of suitcases, probably full of money. Apparently, treasures have been found in his residence. The guy is an absolute criminal. But he hasn't accepted the decision yet. So this is a potentially very scary situation. I'm just assuming that any human being at this stage would now accept defeat. If he doesn't, what's he going to do? He might find it difficult to call in the Ukrainian army because they're very low paid. A lot of them have already said they're not going to fight against their own people. But is that just the army in West Ukraine saying they wouldn't fight against Western Ukrainians? What about in East Ukraine? Would they fight against Western Ukrainians? There are some deep splits, but it's a very complicated situation because in East and West Ukraine, like in Ireland, you have people who disagree with each other or from different backgrounds within those communities. So it's a very difficult situation. But my fear is that Mr. Yanukovych doesn't care one iota about Ukraine anyway, and would quite happily see most of these protesters slaughtered. Did he sign a deal with Putin a few weeks ago worth billions of dollars? Did he sign an agreement whereby he was basically giving up Ukraine to Putin and saying, I'll refuse to resign. Ukraine will become weak and fractured. You can then move your troops in under the pretext of looking after the situation, stabilizing the situation, but really just occupying Ukraine, trying to take it back maybe, or just basically protecting business interests. There's all kinds of issues with the economy in Ukraine, like the gas pipeline, which has been going arguments with Russia going on for years and years. If Russia controlled Ukraine, that would be a big benefit to themselves. If Russian troops move into Ukraine, how is the rest of the world going to react? How is America going to react? A lot of people watch the news and think that these situations, yeah, they're mildly interesting, but they don't affect me. So why do I even to watch it? But some of these situations could potentially explode and literally explode and affect all of us. Like it seemed to me that the Syria situation some time ago with the chemical weapons that were being used over there, and Obama supposedly caring about all these poor people being affected by chemical weapons when during the Iraq War, chemical weapons were clearly used by U.S. troops on the city of Fallujah, I think it was. Almost the same stuff, not exactly the same, but almost the same stuff. These people don't care. They wouldn't have given one thought to people dying with the use of chemical weapons in Syria. So, what was it all about? It seemed to me that they were salivating over the idea of going to war there. They desperately wanted to go to war. They couldn't do it because of public opinion, maybe some other issues, but they couldn't do it. So they've had to find another war to start. I do believe these people literally do want to go to war. It's big business. They can make a lot of money selling contracts. Those contracts that you saw being sold and sorted out before the Iraq War. This can all happen again. I wonder whether Obama and Putin are actually good friends and sit down and talk about how this is going to play out so that they can both benefit from the situation. America has debts to pay. Whilst wars cost lives, I think they're actually quite good for business in some ways. And is this what's happening here in Ukraine? Basically, are they going to call the troops in? Is Yanukovych going to call the troops in? I'm hoping and thinking he's going to be out and admit defeat within the next day or two because I just can't see how on earth he's going to maintain power when his own parliament are voting to oust him. That would just be ridiculous. I think his life is now in danger. I don't think people are content with his resignation anymore. They want his death. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just gets out of Ukraine. I think he's trying to go to Russia. Apparently, there's reports that he's at the airport in Ukraine trying to get to Russia. Everyone seems to flee to Russia these days, both good and bad. I mean, Snowden apparently also went and hid out there as well and is still hiding out there. That's another question. What do you think of Snowden? Mo 80% of me thinks this guy is good and he's exposed. He's exposed and continues to expose really good information. 20% of me wonders whether he's some kind of Russian agent. But either way, whatever he's doing, it seems to have a beneficial outcome to me. And it's ironic that Russia now seems to be the sanctuary for people who want to speak out. That's Western powers should hold their heads in shame of the suppression of information that they're becoming involved in. How the majority of people in society still do not see what's happening, I do not know. I do not understand. And I remember someone else in the comment section of the videos that I was posting wrote the same thing. His friends just seem to be oblivious to it all. And I know some of those people too. But like I said, I think some of it. Don't be surprised if it's because they've got families and they don't want to believe this is true. I don't want to believe this is true. I hope that a lot of the things that I've been reading and hearing and thinking are wrong, because then if I find out they're wrong, I can sleep soundly at night. Although I have to say, I'm quite a good sleeper as it is. Although you know what, in the last week, for whatever reason, I'm finding it harder to sleep. I don't know why that is. Timoshenko, Yulia Timoshenko, has been released and has been seen driving away in a car after leaving the hospital. People should know that whilst she is significantly preferable to Yanukovych, and I think almost anyone on earth is preferable to him, she does seem to be also under investigation for corruption, not from necessarily just because of Yanukovych wanting to get rid of her, but I've heard word from people in Western Ukraine on the street as well that She's quite corrupt herself, and this is the problem in Ukraine. Who do you replace Yanukovych with? And apologies for my pronunciation, Yanukovych. I always had problem pronouncing this guy's name, so apologies if I'm putting the stress in the wrong place. Being an English teacher as well, it's disgraceful, I know. But who's going to replace him? As I was saying about the corruption in Ukraine, it's really hard in any country to find a good politician. In fact, I've got such a distrust of all politicians. I don't know that I've ever heard of a good one. Just some are better than others, that's all. They're all inherently bad, in my opinion, because any good person that gets involved in politics is immediately crushed. The system's not designed for you to prosper in that kind of system. We need to change the entire political system. Um, One idea I had, which I'll let you know and see what you think, is that we should have governments controlled by almost similar to jury service in the UK, where you get a letter through the post saying you're now you need to be a member of the jury on a certain date. The period is going to last for a certain time, and you get elected. You get basically elected at random to become part of the government. Now there are obviously flaws in that idea, but the basic idea is we need people in power who don't want to be in power, because politicians want to be in power. They thrive on power. They want people to respect them and have to do what they say. And I've always found this in the workplace as well. Who gets promoted? Generally, it can sometimes be because someone's good at their job, but generally it's someone who's going to obey the rules, do as they're told, and likes handing down rules to people below them. And people who don't like doing that will not be promoted, or people who even holding views of believing in conspiracies and things like that, having that kind of mind usually means you will not be promoted. People don't, you're not towing the mainstream view. You're not going to be promoted. I'm not talking out of from the perspective of someone who's always overlooked about being promoted. I actually don't like being in those kind of positions. I don't like barking orders at people. That's something I may have to overcome, because if you wanna get ahead in our society, you need to become the kind of person that tells other people what to do. It's just I find I'm uncomfortable with it. But maybe that's just a personal problem. What do you think about that? Do you think what kind of people do you think should take the responsibility for controlling other people? I think it's good people who don't want to be there. There are some complications with that, like I said. Obviously, you also need stability. So imagine if you could get a really good person in power. How long should they stay there? I mean, you need some kind of continuity as well. So you need someone, maybe one person, to be in power for maybe a year or a couple of years and have a long-term strategy. It's really difficult to know what to replace our governments with, but my belief is the system itself has to go. And I think that all the revolutions that are occurring in the world at the moment are because people are fed up with the way things are. You know, Obama's Obama's during his presidential campaign said, "Change you can believe in." I mean, what a joke that turned out to be. But a lot of people latched onto that because that's really how people are feeling. They want change you can believe in. I don't vote. I don't vote at all because um, it makes no difference over here in the UK. I hate them all. I hate all the parties and their leaders. Uh, it's like voting for how you want to die. Do you want to be electrocuted or drowned? Um, so I don't vote. Let me know how you feel about that. I know some people think, well, how can you expect to change anything if you don't vote? I hate the system itself. It's a waste of time. My vote, if I could vote, the thing I would want to vote on is, do we keep the current system or do we change it completely and get rid of all of them? Change the system so we get people who don't want to be in power, empower good people, good decent people, pay them as well, you know. You get paid for this, maybe jury service kind of selection. So that's my idea about people be selected randomly. Obviously, you could get a few nut jobs in there, so maybe you'd have to have it, some vetting of these people. There's obviously some, you know, there's lots of things that would have to be worked out by that. Do you have any ideas of how we could change the system, and what kind of system would you put in place instead? Because I believe this world does not stand a chance of improvement and improving and becoming a better society unless we change our political system. Let me know what you think about that. Anyway, the situation, back to the situation in Ukraine. The situation there is terrible. I've got friends over in Ukraine. I really hope it's worked out. The worst case scenario is possibly, and I'm not joking here, World War III could be started here. Russia moved troops in. Are the EU and the Western powers going to stand for that? Probably not. America says you move troops in, and we're gonna attack you if you come to Ukraine. There is I have heard reports that there are American warships off the coast of Ukraine. The excuse given was they're there for the security of the Winter Olympics. This is just rumors I've heard, and that excuse just seems ridiculous. Um, Whenever I see news like that, if it's true, I believe those kind of things signify what could really be happening. Is this the pretext for World War III we're seeing here? And I keep thinking that about a lot of situations. So I like to be wrong. So if anyone says, "Oh, you were wrong about this, Scott," you said on episode one, or if there's any other episodes, great. I want to be wrong about a lot of these things. I don't want the future to be the way that it's looking to me, dark, and with these kind of people running our society that are actually evil, evil people. I want to be wrong about it. So let's wait and see what happens in Ukraine. Occasionally, I'll put some links for you to click on, like I did for live coverage of the center of Kiev, for example. I put a link there. Those kind of things, to me, links with live cameras on events, are better than any news story, because you can actually see what's happening straight away. Even if you can't understand it, you know, there was a lot of speeches given in Ukrainian. You could still see what's happening, you know. Um, I'll probably come to an end shortly, but I just wanted to say that I was also in Bangkok during the revolutions there. I was staying in a road called Kosan Road. Anyone who's been to Thailand, backpacker types will know exactly what road I'm talking about. And that actually a large part of the revolution that was going on there occurred, the protests occurred just one street away. And you would almost, if you were on holiday and you went to Kosan Road, you could you could stay there for weeks and not know there was a revolution going on 2 streets away. I heard about it, and I heard where to go. I just walked 2 streets away, and I was amongst millions of people on the streets on a massive kind of highway. There was little barbecues there. There was music. There was a huge screen. Um, there was a guy, the opposition leader, talking, giving one of his speeches. Sounded very charismatic, but again, I just sometimes feel people are, sometimes duped. The person that replaces someone might be better, but maybe they're not going to be a long-term good solution for the country. But anyway, the atmosphere was electric. It was I just stood there and took it all in. The music, the food, selling T-shirts, the atmosphere, the belief. I think the main point was the belief people felt that they could change and control the situation themselves, and people can. Enough people get together, they control the situation themselves. Unfortunately, amongst any population of people, there's always really stupid people, and they can affect the outcome more in some ways because they can become quite violent and do things to satisfy their own personal selves rather than the good of society. And that's not to say that violence isn't sometimes the answer. I'm a pacifist in that I don't I'm not comfortable with war. I think, for example, in the Iraq War, if we had a world council that actually did its job, criminal court, for example, that went in and arrested Saddam Hussein, that went in and arrested the Korean leader, that went in and arrested the Ukrainian leader, and held these people responsible for their actions, put them in prison. You don't need to go to war and start to kill citizens of that country. Let me know what you think about that. Why can't we just have a criminal court that arrests these evil people? Anyone who runs a country irresponsibly, tortures people, kills people, or is just plain stupid like Yanukovych, should be arrested and put in prison. Why is there the need to kill hundreds of thousands of people that in some cases don't even know what they're dying for? You know, sometimes violence is necessary because if people won't listen and you want your freedom, you're going to have to take it. You know, my respect to some of the protesters in Ukraine who are often portrayed by the media as provocateurs. I hear that phrase every single time in Thailand, in Ukraine. Um, Provocateurs, talked about in a negative way. These people want freedom. They're not people who should be looked at as though they're criminals. They're trying to get rid of the criminals. I think even in countries where people think everything's fine, it's not fine. Your freedoms are being taken away, um, and you have to be careful what you say. I even have to be careful what I say to a certain extent, although I'm not going to be too careful, to be honest. Anyhows, that's enough from me. What do you think? Is World War III going to happen soon? Where's it going to happen? Korea, Ukraine, Syria, Iran? Take your pick. Um, Hope you've enjoyed listening to this show. How many more shows there are going to be? I don't know. Depends on how many people are listening and what else happens in the news. How regularly, I don't know. It's an experiment, basically. Okay. Thanks for listening. Catch you later. Goodbye.